She didn't know why she always chose the same flowers. Perhaps it was out of habit, perhaps out of hope. But every morning very early, before the dew dried from the leaves and the sun burned her skin already so marked by life's hardships, Mia Katerina filled her fingers with the hidden thorns between the stems of roses and carnations. Her hands knew more of silence than of rest, and her eyes, more of resistance than of joy. Still, there was something in the way she looked at the flowers that seemed like prayer, as if that simple daily offering could change something. And it did. Leonard Shell always woke to the sound of light footsteps and the rustling of petals being cut. He lay there, pretending to sleep, while listening to the breeze play with Mia's skirt and the birds sing louder as if celebrating her presence. She didn't know, but he watched her, day after day, silently, passionately. And it was there, between the perfume of flowers and the silence of eyes, that love was born, without asking permission, without respecting the cruel boundaries of time and society. The year was 1806, and Tennessee still bled with the invisible chains of slavery. Mia Katerina was only 18 years old, but her soul seemed to have lived 100. She was the daughter of a woman who died at 29 from complications in the birth of her 6th child. All from different fathers, all handed over as property before they even learned to walk. Mia was the only one who remained at Golden Eagle Farm. The rest had been sold or buried. The little brown thing, as Mr. Richard liked to call her with that disdain carved into his teeth and cold eyes, had learned to be silent. But her heart had never learned to surrender. Leonard Shell was the youngest of Richard's 3 sons. Unlike his brothers, who resembled their father in both face and cruelty, Leonard was different. He secretly read books from his mother's library, questioned the household orders, and above all felt deeply. Something that, in that family, was seen as weakness. The first contact between Mia and Leonard was brief, almost trivial. He had dropped a book in the parlor and she, while collecting flowers, picked it up and handed it to him. "Thank you," he said. And Mia didn't respond. But her eyes spoke. They were eyes of someone who saw all the world's pain and still remained standing. Leonard never forgot that instant. From then on, he sought to find her. Sometimes he pretended to leave early just to cross paths with her on the porch. Other times, he walked around the house just to see her reorganizing the vases, one flower at a time, as if she were sewing beauty to suffering. It was on a rainy morning that the unthinkable happened. Mia was collecting flowers even under the fine drizzle. Her hair stuck to her forehead, her arms covered in mud. Leonard came out with an umbrella, without saying a word, and opened it over her. Mia looked at him, startled, almost dropping the arrangement she held in her hands. "You'll get sick," he said. And for the first time she smiled at him. That scene, if someone had seen it, could have ended in punishment. But Leonard didn't care. From that day on, the two met in secret, exchanging few words, some smiles and much silence. It wasn't the kind of romance made with letters or passionate kisses, but with gestures, glances, and courage. Leonard began leaving her books hidden in the woodshed. She read secretly at night by lamplight. He taught her to write her name with crooked letters on a piece of paper. "Mia Katerina," she drew, enchanted, as if discovering she could exist beyond the walls of the slave quarters. But rumors came. They always do. And in a world where loving was too dangerous for those with skin the color of the sun, a whisper was enough to become a sentence. The overseer heard, commented to the cook, who told the governess, who whispered in the ear of Mr. Richard's wife, who finally told her husband with an air of feigned indignation, more concerned with the house's reputation than with the servant girl's fate. Mr. Richard heard everything without blinking. That night, he took the whip from his belt and went to the back area where Mia was organizing bed linens. The sky seemed to forebode a storm. He entered abruptly, eyes bloodshot, arm already raised. "You'll learn to know your place, you impudent little thing," he shouted. Mia tried to run but tripped on the cloths. It was then that Leonard appeared, almost as if he knew that was the moment. He placed himself between his father and Mia, arms spread, chest raised, eyes firm. "No one, not even you, my father, will lay a finger on the woman I love." Silence fell like a bomb. Mr. Richard stood static for seconds that seemed like years. Then, without saying another word, he turned his back and left. The next morning, Leonard was expelled from the house. Mia disappeared. And for 3 days no one knew where they were. Until, in a hidden shack in the woods, they rekindled the flame that society tried to extinguish. They spent the night lying on a straw mattress, embraced, whispering plans that seemed impossible. But they were theirs alone. At the following dawn they departed. They walked for days, through the most hidden trails, avoiding any main road, feeding on what they could, sleeping under trees. When they reached a small town in the interior, Leonard presented himself as Mia's husband and said they had lost everything in a stagecoach robbery. The story was simple, convincing enough. They were received with suspicion, but without refusal. Leonard got work carrying sacks of corn at a local farm. His body had never been so demanded, but he offered it with gratitude. Mia began working as a cleaner and cook at a small inn, in exchange for a simple room, but their own. At night, they sat on the inn's porch and counted stars. Sometimes they laughed about nothing. Sometimes they cried for no reason. But they were together, and free. Even within an invisible prison called prejudice. She learned to write letters with her new employer. He began learning to calculate and measure sacks. They made plans. They spoke of a house with a garden, of children, of names, of dreams. And each time they looked at each other, Mia saw in Leonard's eyes not just love, but respect. And that, for her, was the true miracle. Leonard, in turn, felt that for the first time in his life he didn't need to hide who he was. With Mia he was whole. He was a man. He was free. And that was enough. But the world doesn't forget. And shadows from the past always try to return. The meeting room at the New York headquarters reflected modern power. Noble wood, glass, steel, clean elegance. But there was a detail that escaped almost everyone's attention. The vases with fresh flowers. Joanna Garner noticed. No one knew, but it was she who, discreetly, replaced the old flowers with new ones every week. That day, while waiting for the shareholders to arrive, her fingers got lost among carnations and white roses. She arranged the stems in a crystal vase, almost instinctively, as if within her there was an ancient memory that didn't belong to her, but guided her naturally. Benjamin Lewis entered the room shortly before the meeting began. He saw Joanna from behind. the navy blue blazer molding her dignified bearing and delicate hands dancing among the petals. He remained motionless for a few seconds, as if time had played a trick on him. He felt something pulse in his chest, an inexplicable recognition. That image wasn't new. It was as if a memory he had never lived screamed from the past. Mia Katerina. The stories his grandmother told in whispers on nights when his father was already asleep. The slave who picked flowers. The impossible love. The boy who protected her with his own life. That made no sense at that moment. And yet it made perfect sense. During the meeting, Benjamin could barely maintain focus. He discreetly observed Joanna, admiring not only her beauty, but the firmness of her posture, the clarity with which she explained her expansion plans, the absolute mastery over the data she presented. When the meeting ended, Benjamin turned to his father, Mr. David Lewis, and said, "Who is that beautiful young woman?" David frowned. "The new regional manager. A smart little thing, but she has a lot to learn." Benjamin looked at his father with disgust. "Your way of speaking is despicable." David just huffed, irritated, and left the room. Benjamin waited for everyone to leave. Joanna was still in the room, organizing her papers. He approached, extending his hand with a gentle smile. "You must be Joanna, the new regional manager. Congratulations on the promotion. I'm Benjamin Lewis, product manager. It's a great pleasure to meet you." She smiled, surprised. "Yes, I'm Joanna. It's an enormous pleasure to meet you, Benjamin Lewis." "Yes, I'm Mr. David's son. But we prefer to leave titles at the door when we get home at the end of the day." Both smiled. But something had been planted there, and flowers were beginning to sprout. Days passed. At 7:30 in the morning, it was common for the two to meet in the elevator, both holding coffee cups, eyes still sleepy but smiles alive. "I'm happy to know I'm no longer the only one turning on the lights around here," Benjamin joked once. "I've always had the habit of arriving early. I learned from my mother. She said the world opens up for those who arrive first." He laughed. "Mine said the world closes for those who forget the key." The lightness of the encounters soon turned into lunch conversation. Benjamin invited her and she accepted. The table was simple, but the laughter was abundant. Topics flowed like waters that already knew the way. Chocolate. Basketball. No. Each discovery was a note in harmony. And the pauses in dialogue weren't discomfort, they were enchantment. One evening, Joanna was walking home when she received a message. "I have 2 tickets for the Jazz Quintet premiere at the Cultural Center. Would you like to accompany me?" She responded with a simple, "Yes." The phone's silence was soon filled by a photo. It was the ticket. And a flower emoji. Romance blossomed. They just didn't know yet that it was about to be crushed by the cold hands of prejudice. It was a Friday afternoon. Joanna was leaving the meeting room, exhausted, when she overheard a conversation between Mr. David Lewis and one of the directors. "This little thing even has presence, but won't go far. You know how it is, they're hardworking, but they weren't made for leadership." Joanna's blood boiled. The words cut deeper than she expected. For a moment, she thought about pretending she hadn't heard. But there was a Mia inside her who had already been called a little thing. And that Mia now lived in her skin. The next day, Benjamin appeared in her office with a serious expression. "I found out about what my father said. I have no words." Joanna looked at him. Her eyes were teary but firm. "You don't need to say anything, Benjamin. But I do. I need this kind of thing to stop. Not for me. For all those who came before and for those who will come after." Days later, Joanna filed a formal complaint against Mr. David for racial slurs. The case reverberated among shareholders. The company tried to cover it up. They offered promotions, bonuses, silence contracts. Joanna refused them all. Benjamin then made a decision that would change his life. He resigned. "If I stay here, I'm complicit. And I'm not complicit." Joanna smiled, sad but also relieved. "Are you sure?" "The only certainty I have is that I want to build something with you. Something real." They left the company hand in hand. They didn't have much, but they had ideas. Joanna had always dreamed of creating a cosmetics line for black skin. Benjamin knew the production structure. In 2 months, the seed of the microenterprise was born. Skin flower. Joanna took care of formulas, packaging, communication. Benjamin handled production, logistics, suppliers. The first sales came online. In 3 months, they already had a waiting list for new products. That's when David found out. Benjamin's father exploded in fury. He said his son was burning the family name. That allying with people like that was social suicide. He tried to sabotage the project, buying suppliers, bringing down websites. He spread lies about product quality. But the more he attacked, the more the project grew. 'Cause it wasn't just about cosmetics. It was about justice. During this process, Joanna discovered she was pregnant. Benjamin cried when he heard. "A child. The world will be difficult for him, Joanna. But I swear, he'll grow up knowing he came from love. From the most resistant love that ever existed." Drew was born on an April afternoon. The name was a tribute to Andrew, Mia's older brother, who had helped her escape and died trying to protect her. A story that Benjamin and Joanna knew in fragments, but felt within their skin. And it was Drew who, years later, changed old David's heart. The man who spent his life despising other skin color, one day found himself sitting on the floor, with his grandson in his lap, while the boy played with a blue car. David smiled, defeated by a love he didn't understand. This little thing is my grandson, whom I love so much." Benjamin looked at him in silence. Joanna watched from the doorway. Nothing was said in that instant, but everything was felt. Because in the end, all the paths of that story, all the thorns and flowers, whips and words, oppressions and kisses, led to an immutable truth. The color of love is to love. Time passed with the softness of spring mornings. Fleur de Pelle gained more and more space. It wasn't just a brand, it was a manifesto. Joanna and Benjamin became symbols of courage, innovation and love. The microenterprise made news in entrepreneurship magazines, beauty blogs and social media. The couple was sought by dreamy young people, by people tired of being invisible, by all those who yearned for representation. Each product carried a story, a purpose. and the message that beauty has no standard tone. On a sunny Saturday, Joanna organized a lecture at a community center about self-esteem and identity. Drew, now 3 years old, ran through the corridors while Benjamin, in a white t-shirt and calm smile, adjusted the microphone on stage. This was the life they had built with their own hands, and every small detail, from the cream packaging to their son's games, was a brick in this home of affection and courage. But tranquility would soon be challenged again. David Lewis, wounded in pride and still bitter about having been denounced, plotted in the shadows. With his powerful connections and access to strategic data, he spread information that Fleur de Pelé products caused allergies, falsified documents, and pressured regulatory agencies to open investigations. All this without leaving direct traces. It was the kind of dirty war he knew how to wage well. When the first rumors appeared online, Joanna felt her stomach turn. Benjamin tried to stay calm, but the tension was visible. They were difficult days. Old customers began to distrust, distributors canceled orders, and beauty sites began questioning the brand's product quality. In the midst of chaos, Joanna looked at Benjamin and said, "If we stop now, they win. If we remain silent, the lie becomes truth." That's when they decided they would face everything head-on. They invested what little they had in a new independent laboratory to test products, opened factory doors to journalists and consumers, and launched a campaign with a slogan, "Beauty with Truth." The response was explosive. Black influencers, renowned dermatologists, and real customers recorded videos telling how the products changed their lives. The hashtag #SkinFlowerTruth went viral. But the big turnaround came when Joanna was invited to speak at one of the country's biggest innovation events. The packed auditorium fell silent when she took the stage. She wore a white jumpsuit, simple, elegant, hair loose and eyes firm. "My name is Joanna Garner. I was a cleaner, then an attendant. I climbed step by step because I didn't let myself be convinced by voices that said I wasn't capable. I created a company with my partner, a white man who chose to walk beside me and not in front of me. And today, after being sabotaged, defamed and persecuted, I'm here to say that you cannot erase us. 'Cause we are many. Because our story has been told in silence for too long. And now our voice is loud." The audience applauded, standing up. Tears ran down many faces. Among those present were investors, entrepreneurs, and even politicians. But from the back of the room, sitting discreetly, was David Lewis. He had gone to the event in secret. He wanted to see how far this woman's audacity would go. But what he saw was something that dismantled every certainty he carried. Joanna spoke with truth. And her truth crossed generations. That night at home, David faced his own mirror. He saw an old, hard, lonely man. His son avoided him, his daughter-in-law had sued him, and his grandson didn't know him. A knot grew in his throat. For the first time, he felt shame not only for what he had said, but for what he had believed all his life. A few days later, Joanna received an unexpected call. It was David. The hoarse and hesitant voice on the other side said, "I would like to see my grandson." Benjamin was against it. Joanna, cautious, reflected for days. But something inside her, perhaps Mia's blood, whispered, Giving redemption a chance is also an act of courage. The meeting happened on a warm afternoon. Drew was in the garden, playing with his cars. David arrived with a timid package in his hands. A wooden truck made by himself. Joanna watched from the porch. Benjamin remained silent, a few steps away, vigilant. Drew looked at his grandfather without strangeness. He took the toy, smiled, and said, "Thank you, Grandpa." David knelt down, knees creaking under the weight of age and sins. He picked up the boy in his lap, with hands that once wielded arrogance, now trembling with tenderness. This little thing is my grandson, whom I love so much," Joanna cried. Not for the scene itself, but for the journey to get there. For all the times they said she was just a little thing. That Mia was just a little thing. That people like them didn't deserve love, nor respect, nor future. But there was Drew. Loved, respected, free. At the end of that week, Joanna and Benjamin gave an interview to a worldwide magazine. The reporter asked, "How do you define the color of love?" Joanna responded with a smile that carried centuries. "The color of love is to love." And the world listened. The new phase of Skin Flower was prosperous. Sales exploded and the brand grew consistently. Joanna and Benjamin worked tirelessly, but found time for Drew, now 4 years old, who began drawing his first sketches of the world he saw. The child grew surrounded by love, in a home that welcomed truths, struggles, and dreams. Joanna and Benjamin's relationship flourished like a song that matures with time. They were accomplices, partners. They laughed together, faced difficult days with courage, and knew how to communicate with their eyes. Benjamin handled accounts. Joanna managed suppliers and created new formulas. On Saturday nights when Drew slept, they sat on the sofa, sharing a glass of wine, talking about everything, or just staying silent, sharing the peace they had conquered. But not everyone looked favorably upon that love. Some investors began to distance themselves due to differences in vision. Others insinuated that perhaps it would be better to keep Benjamin as the company's face, since he sold better. Joanna listened silently. She knew these phrases came disguised as commercial concern, but they were old acquaintances. They carried the same poison as always: prejudice. Tensions increased when Joanna was nominated for an International Women's Entrepreneurship Award. One of the jury members, an old friend of David Lewis, let slip that the company should have been idealized by Benjamin. After all, genetic intelligence is hereditary. The statement generated public outrage. Joanna sued the event and again stood up to fight injustice. David Lewis, who had been trying to get closer to his grandson with spaced visits, was furious to learn that Joanna was in the spotlight once more. At a dinner with shareholders, he let slip, without realizing he was being recorded. "She's smart, this little thing. But she'll end up where they all end up, serving." The recording leaked the following week. The press pounced. The scandal was so big that Benjamin, outraged, publicly resigned during a company press conference. Joanna also officially severed any remaining ties. They were free. But the price of freedom was uncertainty. In the following months, without investor support, without the corporate structure they had built, they had to start almost from scratch. They created a new name for the brand, reconfigured packaging, and used their savings to maintain minimum production. The microenterprise became nano, and the world seemed harsher again. But there was an essential difference. Now they had each other, and they had Drew. It was he, with his attentive little eyes and innocent questions, who gave Joanna the idea for the new product line. Inspired by her son's games and natural elements, the Raíces Roots line was born, with names like Childhood, Nest, Embrace, and Courage. Each bottle came with a small letter handwritten by Joanna, telling real memories or invented stories to inspire whoever used the product. The strategy worked. The internet fell in love with the new proposal's delicacy. Influencers began posting emotional videos, reading the letters before applying the cream. The hashtag #RootsOffHealing went viral in less than 3 days. Sales rose again. Meanwhile, David, pressured by boards, resigned from company leadership. He retreated to his house, now silent, where only echoes of past choices kept him company. But Drew insisted on seeing him. "I want to show my drawing to Grandpa," he would say. Joanna, with a divided heart, agreed. She knew that forgiving isn't forgetting, but choosing not to carry the weight. On a gray autumn afternoon, Benjamin took Drew to his father's house. David, now visibly older, opened the door with teary eyes. The boy ran to him with a paper in his hands, a colorful drawing with 3 figures holding hands and a huge sun. "This is me, this is Daddy, and this is you, Grandpa. Mommy said love brings us together again." David held the drawing as if holding his own soul. He knelt down, hugged his grandson tightly, and murmured, "This little thing is my grandson, whom I love so much." Benjamin watched from afar. He saw in his father a broken man, but not defeated. There was a glimpse of redemption there. A few weeks later, David sought out Joanna. He asked for forgiveness, not in public, but before her. He acknowledged the pain he caused, the paths he obstructed. Joanna listened to everything in silence. When he finished, she replied, "I don't forgive for you. I forgive for me, for Drew, for Mia. Life taught me that the color of love is to love." The brand grew again, with new identity, new audience, and an even firmer cause. Joanna became an international speaker. Benjamin published a book about masculinity and vulnerability. Drew grew up seeing his parents as giants. And on the Raíces line packaging, there was now a new letter, written by Benjamin. "My son, the world may try to tell you who you should be, but the voice that really matters is the one that comes from the heart. The love your parents lived built bridges. And even if storms come, remember, loving is an act of courage." Time, the silent master, taught that scars from the past don't disappear, but lose the power to define who we are. Joanna and Benjamin, now more than partners, were living proof that courage could overcome prejudice's invisible chains. Among starry nights, holding little Drew's hands, they felt stronger than ever, an indestructible trinity, made of dreams, struggles, and a love that refused to be diminished. David, though marked by his errors, found in his grandson's smile an unexpected balm. In his tired gaze, there was a new brightness, the seed of humility sprouting in previously barren soil. And in words spoken in low voices, when Drew ran to play in the garden, the promise of a man who was beginning to learn that the color of love is to love wasn't just a phrase, but a path to liberation. The micro-enterprise grew, now more than a business, a symbol, a lighthouse for those who still faced the shadow of exclusion. Each package, each handwritten letter, carried stories of resistance, ancestry, and the unshakable strength of hope. Joanna and Benjamin knew they weren't alone. Hundreds, thousands, echoed their voices through the courage to live the truth. On a serene day, under a deep blue sky, while Drew ran among wildflowers, Joanna sat beside Benjamin. He held her hand tenderly, eyes reflecting the immensity of what they had built. "I never imagined love could be so fierce and gentle at the same time," he said, with a smile that was prayer. She responded with a look that spoke more than 1,000 words. "Love doesn't choose skin, doesn't bow to human laws that try to imprison it. It is the essence that transcends time and space. It is the soul that recognizes itself in another soul. It is the light that destroys all darkness." And so, in the complicit silence of that instant, the certainty that true love is the greatest revolution, the force that transforms, heals, and liberates, sealed that family's destiny. Because, in the end, what remains is what the heart chooses to keep. Not resentment nor pain, but hope for a world where the color of love is to love. Further ahead, the voices of new generations would sing the same song, a melody of respect, equality, and freedom. Drew, with bright eyes and curious soul, would grow knowing that his color, his name, his story were precious as gold. And that true legacy isn't measured in possessions, but in shared love, in open doors, in dreams without chains. As the evening light tinted the horizon gold, Joanna and Benjamin rose, ready for whatever came. Because they had discovered together that love isn't just feeling. It's courage, it's resistance, it's the spark that lights the flame of change. And in the heart of that home, the promise echoed, eternal and invincible. The color of love is to love.